北大方正集团是共产党江家之后邓家之末期的综合体改革开放，就是中国的改革开放走在前边的，不是水暖鸭先知，是中共的所有的钱在哪儿，钱在哪儿，共产党要去哪儿，要干啥，是北大先知。北大作为一个智库，一个中国的大的院校，他觉得要改革开放，所以北大你看看从来踩的点都很准。北大搞什么大学产业、大学科技，北大科技以国家安全科技命脉成为共同体，为国争光，为国搞科技，派出王恩哥等各种物理学家、科学家渗透到西方，积极参与所谓的100人计划、1000人计划，然后配合中共在国外搞大外宣，以教交友，以学会友。啥叫交友啊？以教交友就以教南京皇帝，以学交友就以学南京皇帝。最后是什么？大学要大胆地走在统战的前线，统战不就是对外的情报部吗？要走在情报部，最后叫步子更大一点。到了这个江泽民末期的时候，就说特别是香港回归之后，他和曾庆红就更加明确的说，路子要大一点，充分的利用好高等院校的资源，把高等院校变成国家和党的对外改革开放的资产。最后就甚至就这都懒得装了，把各大院校变成我党对外改革开放的名片，鼓励教授学校大搞山产，鼓励院校与海外学校联姻，与其怕反对西方的自由资本主义思想，所谓的自由资本主义思想影响我们，还不如我们直接到他们家去影响他们去呢。所以这才有100人计划、1000人计划嘛，直接我就购买了。然后呢，各大院校那个时候成立了什么？大家知道吗？院校过去各大学校从来没有一个组织，叫什么？从江增之后，各大院校增加了一个，所有的就是校党委书记下的叫对外开放办公室，教着学，现在对外开放去了，是吧？就像警察突然发展一个部门，对服务小姐妈咪委员会，那哪个小姐妈咪不想来呀？警察开了个对服务小姐的，给小姐按摩的，给保护妈咪安全的，当然来了。所有各大院校就成了科技的摇篮，对外联系关系的桥梁，以学交友，以教交友，大搞姐妹城市。
I haven't gone into detail about the headlines from the Pfizer documents, but I guess people can read the book for that, except to say that it is the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history, unfortunately. And the Pfizer papers do have a specific focus on destroying reproduction. So that's why I wanted to believe for the longest time that it wasn't a depopulation agenda, but ultimately the evidence persuaded me within the Pfizer documents that that's exactly what it is. They knew they were blocking women's ovaries with lipid nanoparticles. They knew the lipid nanoparticles traversed the placenta. They determined that the deaths of fetuses were due to maternal exposure, quote unquote, to the vaccine. They knew that vaccinated women who were nursing their babies were making the babies sick. There are charts. This is why I say Mengele science. They're just charts showing this many thousands of babies are vomiting. This many thousands of babies have edema, which is swollen flesh. This many thousands of babies have convulsions. One baby died of multi-organ system failure from nursing vaccinated moms. And to this day, I'm sure in the Netherlands, all over Europe, all over the world, no one's telling vaccinated moms that they can risk their babies' lives by nursing them. But Pfizer knew. Pfizer knew in one section of the Pfizer documents there's an over 80% spontaneous abortion or miscarriage rate. Pfizer knows there's something in the semen of vaccinated men that is possibly dangerous to women or fetuses because they warn vaccinated men not to have intercourse with childbearing age women, and if they do, to use 2 reliable forms of contraception. They knew that the injection doesn't stay in the injection site, but it travels all over the body within 48 hours, accumulating in the adrenals, the spleen, the lymphatic system, the liver, crosses the blood-brain barrier, which causes a lot of the brain damage type reactions you're seeing, and accumulates in the ovaries. They knew that it was damaging the hearts of minors, and our lawyers' FOIA, meaning Freedom of Information Act, documents from the White House showing a scramble in April of 2021 to cover this up. But they just kept going that summer and into the next year, propagandizing parents to vaccinate their minors, knowing they were injuring or killing them.
And what we've identified is severe transcriptomic chaos after mRNA injections in individuals who have been injured. So those who develop new onset cancers, those who have neurological, cardiovascular adverse events after the shots, we actually looked at their blood profiles, right? And we compared it to a control group blood profile, pre-COVID, pre-vaccine, right? So these were blood profiles uploaded to a server about a decade ago. And so in the mRNA injured, thousands of genes become dysregulated.
Really?
Yes.
It affects the genetics?
Yeah.
The genetic code?
Yes, because this modified mRNA gets into these ribosomes. It's not read correctly. It causes biochemical stress. And then it kind of shuts off what's called tumor suppressor genes, P53 and BRCA. These are supposed to suppress cancers. Those are turned off. So then that's why we see these turbo cancers in those individuals who develop.
Are those the people who get those like really aggressive cancers after the shot?
Yeah. And so that explains that. We have this transcriptomic chaos, and now we see what's called biochemical chaos or proteomic chaos. Proteomics is the proteins being produced by these genes are now defective, involving fibrin and amyloid. So we have these misfolded proteins now being produced in some individuals.
What does that cause?
That can cause, this story of these long kind of fibrous clots and some corpses
Oh, the
being
clots.
identified. In the early pandemic, 2020, 2021, 86% of COVID cases confirmed by PCR were not real infections. So all of the lockdowns, all of the vaccine mandates, all of those horrible policies that destroyed our livelihoods and economy were based on a completely fraudulent metric. So this study compared PCR positive rates by week to the actual antibody testing in the same weeks. Because the antibody test will tell you, did you get the antibodies to COVID? And only 14% had actual antibodies among those PCR positive cases. It may even be up to 90% weren't even real infections. So now that this fraud is confirmed, again, people have to be held accountable. All the people that lost their jobs, that were forced to take these injections based on this fear campaign, was all based on this false test, this fraudulent test.
China is our nation's greatest adversary, and it seeks to harm our country on a daily basis. It thrives in the shadows, so it uses fentanyl precursors, predatory trade practices, and cyber attacks to hurt us. China also uses informational warfare, and it would love to influence what American students learn in classrooms from kindergarten through college. The CCP uses our free and open society against us, bankrolling civil organizations with nice-sounding names to sponsor exchange programs and curriculums that hide the truth about China. Earlier this year, my committee highlighted how Montgomery County in Maryland has sent 31 students to China on a trip paid for by the People's Republic of China. That's just one example of why the legislation the House is considering this week is urgently needed. The CCP does not want Americans to learn about the horrific cultural revolution in their history classes. It does not want young Americans to know that it slaughtered innocent students at Tiananmen Square. Nor does it want students to learn about the CCP's ongoing Uyghur genocide and the slave labor that affects the supply chains of clothes and other products they use every day. Parents may think the Chinese Communist Party isn't interested in what their kids are learning, but the CCP wants to influence every American. These bills will empower parents, protect students from Chinese propaganda, and shine a light on how China tries to influence our education system.
And we saw what communist China brought to the United States, not just in the buying of farmland, but literally sending agents to my district and pulling corn seed out of the ground so they could replicate it back home. But now they're not just growing or coming after what we grow in our fields, they're coming after what we grow in our classrooms. Most recently, a group from Des Moines Public Schools was taken on an all-expense-paid trip to be inside China. But the Chinese weren't there under the facade of friendship. They were there to collect information, to exploit, and to manipulate. They forced these kids to hand over their digital information, required them to use WeChat, an internal public server for China, started an early process of cultivation, and in the counter-espionage world, we consider this source recruitment. Consistently, I've had parents across Iowa say, how is this allowed to happen? And the simple truth is, there's no law preventing it. The Chinese government is creating a series of shell organizations to recruit kids to come to China and then exploit them the moment they set down in soil inside Beijing. This has to stop.
I think that it is important to understand that China wants to see Burma weak, divided, and dependent. That is their objective. That is what they are trying to accomplish through their proxies, whether it's the United Wa State Army or their occasional intervention to support and backstop the military regime, the continuous flow of weapons that they provide the military regime. They want to see the junta successfully pull off these elections and bring a level of stability that allows them to continue to do business and pull resources out of Burma without the costs that they're having to deal with right now, the annoying problems of the conflict that Beijing has to bear. At the same time, when it comes to the scam centers and the rare earth mining, Beijing is rapacious in the way that they deal with these things. The scam centers could not exist without the support that the regime in Beijing provides to them. These scam centers are largely the guts, the backbone behind them. And this is a $35 billion a year global industry. I want to be clear about that, and growing quickly. They are using technology in a way that is astounding. AI, they were just raided and had hundreds of Starlink units powering their internet. They are at the center of a web of some of the worst human trafficking I've ever seen in 30 years working on human rights, and most abusive human trafficking system. And they are deeply connected, and this is one thing I think we don't really understand very well or talk about. These scam centers started out as a way to launder money, including drug money from the Mexican cartels. They've become a line of business on their own, but at heart, they're really a massive money laundering organization that benefits the very cartels that are killing Americans with fentanyl. And there's an increasing link between the cartels and the fentanyl production in the Western Hemisphere and the drug production and these transnational Chinese criminal organizations that are underlying this entire web of global illicit activities. And Burma is at the center of it. We need to stop removing sanctions on Burma's arms dealers. We need to make clear that we will not recognize their illicit and illegal election. But at the end of the day, much of the source of the problem for what we're dealing with in Burma derives from across the border in the People's Republic of China. And we need to understand that as we start to think about the solutions that this committee and the administration put forward.
Mexican drug cartels have a problem. Billions of illicit dollars in cash sit trapped in American cities. Wealthy Chinese families, meanwhile, are often looking for ways to acquire dollars because China's strict currency controls mean they can't move their yuan abroad. But there's a new solution to both these problems: Chinese underground banking networks. These groups have become the kingpins of global money laundering by using a sophisticated new method which washes billions of illicit funds, often on American soil. It's called a mirror transaction. Imagine a wealthy mother in Shanghai who wants to buy a flat for her son studying in New York. Capital controls mean she can't move more than $50,000 out of the country. So she uses an encrypted messaging service to contact a broker from an underground bank. The mother transfers yuan to a Chinese bank account controlled by the broker. That broker is connected with someone who has dollars they're trying to get rid of. Someone like a member of a drug cartel. The dealer's money is placed in an American account this mother has access to, minus the broker's fee. The flat deposit is secured. The broker then needs to reimburse the dealer in whatever currency they want. If the dealer wants Mexican pesos, the yuan might be used to buy Chinese goods exported to Mexico. Or it could be used to buy chemical precursors to make fentanyl. No money ever crosses international borders. There's no paper trail connecting the flat purchase and the drug cartel. Much of this is happening on American soil using American banks. Sometimes fake accounts are opened by corrupt bank employees. The dollars in these fraudulent accounts make up a tiny proportion of the money moved by Chinese brokers. America's Treasury estimates Chinese money laundering networks moved $312 billion through American banks between 2020 and 2024. The actual figure is likely much higher. These networks are operating on an unprecedented scale, and that makes them difficult to police. Back in the 1980s, when Colombian cartels ran money laundering networks, authorities were able to shut them down through a combination of extraditions and asset seizures. But police today can't access encrypted messages the way they used to listen in on phone lines. What's more, these vast underground banking networks operate across far more jurisdictions, taking advantage of the gaps between incompatible financial systems. And that means that, for now, brokers around the world will keep on cashing in.
Everyone must now realize why the CCP wants to build a firewall. Over time, people get used to it. Just like when you have a skin disease on your face for a long time, you start to think it's not a disease. In reality, it is very disgusting. The firewall is a big deal. Why would you build one for no reason? The simplest reason. First, you're afraid outsiders will know what you did in the past. Second, you're afraid outsiders will know what you're doing now. And you're afraid insiders will know what's happening outside, where you're planning to do bad things and don't want others to know. It's just this simple logic, nothing profound. Who in the world builds firewalls? China ranks first, North Korea second, Russia third, Iran fourth. Turkey now calls it control, ranking fifth. Are these countries normal? Do they have anything normal about them?